Good morning and welcome to Flashpoint. Well, what do you think? Should we try and work a deal with Iran or send boots on the ground? Also, Hillary Clinton running for president. Why is one of the most conservative Oklahoma politicians ever saying she might be a good one? We're going to cover the whole waterfront with all of that today because Kirk is gone, but when we need to fill in, we find the absolute best, don't we, Mike?
We do. Yeah.
Right here we have our U.S. Senator from the great state of Oklahoma, James Lankford, is here to talk about everything that's happening in Washington and how it affects us here in Oklahoma. Not only that, but presidential politics and everything else, the Iran situation.
Right. Yeah.
But first of all, you're a U.S. Senator, been that for a while now, taking over for Coburn. How do you like it?
Well, we're still getting unpacked, as strange as that sounds. In the Senate is what I affectionately call the hazing process, and the new senators coming in. It's about 5 months before you actually get an office in the U.S. Senate, and so we're still in the basement of the Dirksen building. In the next month or so, we'll get an office. The staff is coming together. It's really a phenomenal staff, and able to pull together from folks all over, and they're very, very pleased with that. And getting organized, getting set up, getting committee assignments. I have 4 committees, 8 subcommittees, so that we're not lacking for things to do.
I was a high school guy in North Tulsa, McLean High School.
Right.
You need to know, you represent the whole state now.
I do.
But I took a class there once, and it was journalism. He said, names of news. So give me some names of people that are on your team now, internally, on your staff.
Right. Well, new chief of staff that just came on with us at the end of last year, still with us, Greg Slavonic.
Oh, he used to work here.
He did. It used to be Channel 4 years ago. Greg Slavonic is doing a terrific job.
Right. He's Admiral, retired U.S. Navy.
We talked him into coming back and saying nation still needs you, and he reengaged and has been a terrific asset.
He has a son that's a three-point shooter at Bishop McGinnis High School a few years. Ask him about that.
I'll have to ask him.
No, he reined him in. I'm serious about that. Okay, but keep talking. Yes.
Yeah, Michelle Altman, who's been on staff with us for 4 years, legislative director, new military affairs person. Stephanie Halcrow was at Tinker Air Force Base and U.S. Air Force for 22 years, was the Inspector General before. DJ Jordan, who we picked up actually from Virginia, was doing our communications director, is extremely sharp. So we have a really, really good team coming together. There's about 35 of us total now within the state and in D.C.
You were in the House. You were a representative from the Oklahoma City area. You ran to fill the remaining term of Dr. Coburn, who stepped down because of health reasons in the U.S. Senate. It has been said before that the Senate is where the boiling tea from the House comes to set and cool down.
Right.
Is that true? Is it a lot more difficult, or not difficult, but a lot more boisterous and tumultuous in the House and maybe a little more buttoned down in the U.S. Senate?
It is, actually. The House is a gang fight all the time. There's 435 members. You can get 218. If you get 218, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. You run over the minority. If you want to do 10 different topics this week, if you can get your group together, you do 10 different bills, 10 different topics, run as fast as you want. In the Senate, you have to get 60. We have 54 Republicans. So if you're going to do anything, you still have to have 6 Democrats on board on anything before you can even vote on it. There's also a rules package in the House where they set the rules. The majority sets the rules. You know what time you're going to vote, how you're going to vote, and the minority sets all that up. In the Senate, you literally have to debate each night what time you're going to start debate the next day. And if you can't resolve at night what time you're going to start debate the next day, you just keep going until you resolve it. So you have to work out your differences. It forces the two sides to be able to resolve some issues, or you literally don't vote. And that's been the problem for a long time in the Senate. We have taken more votes in the Senate. In fact, we did in January of this year, we took more votes in one day than what the Senate took the previous year combined.
The House?
No, the Senate did. The Senate took more votes in one day in January than they did the previous year combined as a Senate. The Senate had completely stopped voting, and it completely locked up. And because of that, we saw what happened. The Senate's back to voting again. We passed a budget. For 18 years, there's been a major issue with Medicare, dealing with what's called the doc fix. The House passed that overwhelmingly a couple weeks ago. The Senate will take that up, and something that's been sitting for almost 2 decades unresolved will get resolved on Medicare within the next week. There are major issues that are moving on education, on some major reforms on energy policy. All those things are being discussed that were stuck before that are now restarting again.
Let's talk about, off the top a little bit here, let's just jump into this. He's talking about the U.S. Senate.
Yeah,
James is, Senator Lankford.
Before the show started, we talked a lot about what's going on in Iran right now. But go ahead.
We're going to talk about that next segment. I want to talk about a former U.S. Senator, Hillary Clinton, who you know quite well, who by the time this airs may have already announced she's running for U.S. president. Okay. And the man you replace, Dr. Tom Coburn, was quoted as saying that he thought she was an effective U.S. Senator, an effective Secretary of State, and could be an effective president as well. What do you think about that and the chances of the Republicans running against Hillary Clinton?
Sure. Yeah. Effective doesn't mean you necessarily agree with the policies. Effective in actually getting your things done is different. Bill Clinton was effective at moving through. That doesn't mean you actually agree with them. And I feel very, very confident, without even talking to Dr. Coburn about that quote, that he doesn't agree with their policies, but sees her as an effective politician that's actually get things done. One of the big challenges that President Obama has had from the very beginning is he doesn't want to actually work with the legislature. He doesn't want to pass law. It's been an issue both with Republicans and Democrats alike in the House and the Senate that the president doesn't reach out. I had to actually proactively go try to meet the legislative liaison from the White House that's assigned to me. They didn't come introduce themselves. I had to go figure out who they were.
What's your take on that? Just man to man. What's that all about?
I don't think the president's really interested in trying to pass law. I think he's trying to find ways to be able to do it through executive memoranda, redefinition of old laws, whatever method that may be. But I think he's frustrated, saying he doesn't want to try to pass law, which, quite frankly, doesn't help his legacy and his effectiveness as president. Executive action, executive memoranda, and such can be thrown out the very first day by a new president that disagrees with it.
That was never the Clinton approach, though.
Law matters. That's right. President Clinton wanted to be able to get in the trenches and actually get things done. So the issue is, will Hillary Clinton engage in that? Probably. She'd probably be more like Bill Clinton in trying to engage in it. Does he agree with the policies? I seriously doubt that.
That could be true. But you've got Cruz.
Right.
You got Rand Paul. Jeb Bush looks like he's going to run.
Right. Marco Rubio.
Marco Rubio, also from Florida. Maybe the governor of Texas.
Probably you're going to have Governor Huckabee as well, Governor Scott Walker from Wisconsin, Carly Fiorina from California, former CEO of Hewlett-Packard. There will be a multitude. There's quite a deep bench there.
I know this is early to ask this, but who do you think would be most effective against Mike Turpen's friend Hillary Clinton?
You know what? I don't think we know. I think there's a lot of those individuals could do that. I don't have a horse in the race at this point. We have a primary for a reason, for people to be able to get there and to be able to run the race and be able to set out a set of ideas. But the adage that Hillary position that she can't be beaten was disproven in 2008 when a little-known senator from Illinois beat her in the primary system. Now, she has a lot of other experiences, being the Secretary of State and such, but I think she'll be extremely competitive. What is the interesting fascination to me on it is actually the question still remains, who will run against Hillary in a primary? Or will Democrats just basically say that's our candidate, and they don't have a bench behind her in that sense? I'm kind of amazed by that, actually.
What do you think?
Yeah.
No, I really am. I agree.
Joe Biden?
No, I don't think it'll be Biden. It could be Elizabeth Warren, and I don't think so. She says she's not going to. She's from Oklahoma, by the way, the senator from Massachusetts, of course. Comment on the uniqueness of Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush right there in Florida, and I guess running against each other.
Correct. Yeah, you got two folks that may very well run against each other from the same state. Rubio was mentored in many ways by Jeb Bush as he was coming through the legislature, and Jeb Bush was governor, and Marco Rubio was actually the Speaker of the House for the Florida legislature at that time. But it's also interesting, you have the same thing in Texas. We're going to have a Ted Cruz and possibly the governor of Texas, Rick Perry, as well, also running. So big states, lots of donors in those states and engagement, lots of differences of opinion in that.
And let me shock the people real quick. It's a news flash. Most people don't realize this. You're running.
Oh, no. I'll tell you, I'm one of 3 senators in the United States Senate that's not running for president.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I am actually running for the Senate next year.
Everybody thinks you got a 6-year term. You did not.
I've had a bunch of folks that have caught me and said, what does it feel like now that you only have to run every 6 years? And I've said, I don't know. You'll have to ask Senator Inhofe. Because I'm still back up again next year. I ran for the last 2 years of Dr. Coburn's term, and so that means I'm right back up again next year. Literally 52 weeks from today, we're doing filing.
And then you just had a town hall meeting of sorts over at Tom and Judy Love's home.
Sure, yeah. I've had multiple meetings, both at Tom and Judy's house, but in Altus and Lawton, been in Tulsa, Muskogee last night, been in Podo, been in Wilburton, been in So we're traveling around Tulsa, traveling around quite a bit now to be able to engage.
It's a big state, isn't it?
It is a big state.
It's 77 counties, Kevin.
Oh, I know.
Broken Bow, Broken Arrow, Alva Altus. There's the four corners right there. You've been to all of them?
I have been to all of them,
I know
actually.
you have.
I have actually been to all of them. Not this week, but I have been to a lot of them. Yeah.
You represent everybody in Oklahoma in the U.S.
He used to be a congressman, now he's a U.S. senator. It's the whole state, folks.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to go Flashpoint with our guest, Oklahoma U.S. Senator James Lankford. He was not a state representative. He was a U.S. representative from the Oklahoma City area. Ran to fulfill the last few years of Senator Tom Coburn's term because the doctor left due to some illness. We want to talk about this deal with Iran because it sounds like, and this is the complaint I get from a lot of people who write in who are Obama supporters and tell me...
In Oklahoma?
Yes, actually.
There are some.
They tell me that the reason the president doesn't want to deal with the Senate and the House because the Senate and the House won't deal with him. And so he's decided to go around them and get some things done. This deal that Kerry's trying to work out, the Secretary of State, like it? No? Are you guys trying to do something different?
Nuclear agreement in Iran.
Yeah, we're actually not trying to do something different. The president has the unique responsibility constitutionally to actually work for foreign policy. So the legislative branch can't do that, can advise, can encourage, can make public statements, but the president has to be the one to be able to actually negotiate. You can only have one negotiator as a country. The concern is we're really in the second of three phases. The initial phase a year ago on how we're going to do the agreement. This one's called the framework of the agreement. Then the final details will come out at the end of June. I have a lot of concerns about. And I think there's been no secret on it because we've moved significantly as a nation from our negotiating position. The UN agreed several years ago Iran would not have the capability to enrich uranium. That was period. Iran would not have that capability. Now we have shifted to the left of the UN saying Iran will have the capability to enrich uranium and will have 5,000 centrifuges. Originally, the UN said none and then said 100, and we're going to stop at 100. We've actually stopped at 5,000. We said Iran would not have nuclear capability for weapons capability. Now the new position is we'll just delay their weapons capability 1 year and say they're going to have a minimum of 1 year before they can have breakout. That's a pretty significant shift towards Iran's position that they're going to have nuclear capability. So now, apparently, the president's negotiated Iran will have nuclear weapons, will have the capability to produce that, but it will have to delay it at least 1 year. And you go 10 years out, or some say it's 12 years, and they can do it at any point. So that's a pretty big shift, and I'm not comfortable with that shift. Iran is the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. For them to have the capability to have nuclear weapons at any point in time, I think is a risk to the entire world, not just to us.
No, but Senator, I mean, you're famous, I think, already for being a quick study. I mean that very respectfully, that you, in Congress, not just the U.S. Senate, and you moved up through the ranks in the House and the Senate, and I think it's going to be good for Oklahoma, you know, the fact that you're moving up. But what I read is our negotiating partners are Russia, China, Germany, France. I mean, the biggest country, they're on our side on this negotiation. So it's not just Obama out there by himself.
That's correct.
But talk about that. I mean, it's not just us. It's all those negotiating partners believing this is moving in the right direction.
Right. It's called the P5+1 agreement. That's 6 total countries that are in there negotiating with Iran. You do that because of the sanctions, because if we put sanctions on them, obviously we're the biggest dog in the fight. If we put sanctions on this group, on Iran, they have the greatest sting. But we also want to have Russia involved now. We want involved now. We want to have Germany involved in that, the UK. We want to have different countries to also say we're also going to keep these same sanctions. The concern that I have is the sanctions at this point unilaterally everyone believes is working. It's forcing Iran to come to the table. But just to the point where it's having the greatest impact, we seem to be lessening those. And now the Ayatollah has stepped out and said the sanctions have to end immediately, June the 30th, or the whole deal's off. And we won't allow weapons inspectors to actually go into any military facility. They can only go into civilian facilities. Well, again, that's irrational in the process. We have to have clear capabilities, and we have to I believe, get rid of their cascading centrifuges. As long as they have the ability to be able to cascade uranium and to be able to enrich that, then I think we have major issues.
Well, how do you do that?
Well, 20 countries, they say they want peaceful use for nuclear power. Great.
Yeah.
20 countries
that is what they say, Kevin. Peaceful use of nuclear power. No nuclear weapon.
Correct. 20 countries have nuclear power. Only 3 of them actually produce their own uranium. The other 17 purchase from Russia, from the United States, from France. They'll purchase from other places, and they'll be able to get that uranium that they need. To say that Iran, the only way they can have nuclear power is if they enrich uranium, flies in the face of reality. They're producing uranium for nuclear weapons. And we've now basically sanctioned that, saying that we're going to limit them to a 1-year breakout time period before they can actually get it. I think that's a problem.
There was a column this week in one of the major newspapers here in Oklahoma where David Boren said, I'm hopeful. And anything that works diplomatically to avoid putting boots on the grounds of our young men and women.
He said that on this show last week.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
I would agree. There's no reason to say that the alternatives are either have this deal or have war. That's a straw man that actually is not consistent
That's
with
not what
reality.
you're saying at all.
That's correct. That's not what I'm saying. You push the negotiations as hard as you can, but if you get to the edge and you can't make a deal, leave the sanctions in place, walk away for a moment, and say, Iran, live with those sanctions again for another year.
Those sanctions?
Well, the sanctions mostly are monetarily. The sale of oil around the world, for instance. It is very, very ironic to me that the president is working to open up the spigot for Iran to sell crude oil around the world, but won't allow the United States to sell crude oil around the world. That's one of those ultimate ironies that are sitting out there.
Nobody's let us sell oil around the world. I mean, what do you mean? It's not just Obama.
No, I mean, it's in law, but it's a matter of help us in this process to undo something that we shouldn't have.
Yeah.
We should have the ability to be able to sell oil all around the world.
You sound like Harold Hamm.
Well, I'd say it's one of those things that's out there where it puts a lot of people back to work. There's a difference between what we sell West Texas Intermediate price for here in the United States and what is Brent crude worldwide.
Yeah.
Allow our folks to be able to sell, especially if they're pulling out of the ground what's called sweet crude. It's a lighter crude that our refineries don't use much of, but refineries around the world do. Allow us to take that crude and sell it in the world market and to be able to refine the crude that works best for us.
And the Oklahoma economy would come zooming back.
Well, it would, actually. It's jobs.
We're kind of off message here right now.
Well, what's the message?
Off of that, yeah.
We were talking about the sanctions against Iran, and most of them are economic.
They're economic. We're still actually holding on some of the money from when the Iranian Revolution happened in 1979. We froze some of those bank accounts, and we still have those bank accounts frozen. To be able to reopen that and to say Iran is such a good actor now that we're going to give them some of that money back, I think is a mistake. They've done nothing to show that they're not advancing terrorism around the world. They're still funding Hamas. They're still funding Hezbollah. They're the primary funder of Assad in Syria. They're out there in the middle of Iraq trying to take that over. They just led a coup in Yemen, right on the border of Saudi Arabia. There's nothing about their behavior that shows they're actually changing as a nation.
You say
it's
that,
the wrong time to lessen up sanctions.
You say that, but ironically, they're helping fight ISIS.
Well, because they hate ISIS as much as we do. But this is one of those situations where even Prime Minister Netanyahu said sometimes the enemy of your enemy is not your friend. They're your enemy as well.
Yeah. All right. We're going to be back.
They just took back the credit.
Yeah. Well,
Saddam Hussein's hometown.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we come back on Flashpoint and other issues facing U.S. Senator James Lankford, which means it's facing us here in Oklahoma. We'll be right back on Flashpoint. Back on Flashpoint, and our guest host this week, we're very fortunate to have our U.S. Senator, one of them, James Lankford, here in from Washington. And we've been covering a lot on the waterfront here about presidential politics. We've talked about the Iran situation, even talked a little bit about Oklahoma, good old Oklahoma crude.
Harold Hamm.
A week from today, you will be back here in Oklahoma City.
I will.
At the Oklahoma City National Memorial for the 20th anniversary. And it sounds like President Clinton will be here, who was the president at the time that happened. Right. Just give me your thoughts on all of that.
A solemn day. I mean, serious for all of us. It's, for everyone that I talk to about it, I hear the first thing always from them is, I can't believe it's been 20 years, because it's still so fresh for Oklahomans. We still live it, and it's still a major part of who we are. It's fascinating to me to have my children are 18 and 14 years old. They are some of that generation born after that.
Right.
But for them, I still tell the story. They know it well, though neither of them ever lived it and have been around it. But it's like that for most Oklahomans. We still tell the story to our children. We're still having the opportunity to be able to recount this. What's amazing to me, I serve on the Intelligence Committee now and get a chance to interact with the FBI and other folks that have learned the lessons of that time period and try to engage in a way to be able to protect the United States. We're working to protect our nation, all enemies, foreign and domestic. And for those of us that are directly impacted by domestic terrorism, we're extremely aware of how incredibly important it is for our law enforcement folks that are here within our country and within our city, the job that they do, and the way they put their lives on the line for our nation every day. It
Absolutely.
matters.
Next Sunday at 8:30.
And Mike, you are on the board of the Oklahoma City National Memorial.
Right.
What is the message from the 20th anniversary from the memorial folks?
Well, a lot of it's been this pin that I'm wearing, and wearing signifies the Oklahoma Standard. And Bill Clinton came here 20 years ago and said, Oklahoma City, you broke our hearts, but you lifted our spirits. And what he meant was how Oklahoma City reacted to what happened to them, that tragedy. You know, that love eventually mastered hate, and good won out over evil. And I like to say that we achieved victory ultimately over victimization. We were victimized, but we achieved victory in this city. And look what's happened. Look how we all came together as a people in this incredible renaissance in Oklahoma City. People from all over the country come to Oklahoma City now and say, how did you do it? How did you rebuild this city? You're going to be on the platform most likely with President Bill Clinton. A week from today at 8:30, the public's invited. It's free at the memorial. You'll be on the platform with him. Do you know the president? Have you ever met him before?
30 seconds left.
We have not met, actually, before.
Okay.
Met Hillary Clinton, his wife, before, and obviously been around President Obama quite a bit in a lot of negotiations, things that we do. But get a chance to visit with him a little bit as well and say thank you for what he did here 20 years ago and for the nation.
And you're a practicing minister for about 22 years, 13 years at Falls Creek. How's that made a difference in being a U.S. Senator?
Oh, it's an enormous difference, because really the key issues that we deal with as a nation are family issues. A lot of people talk about trying to fix the nation from Washington, D.C. We won't fix the nation from D.C. It'll be fixed by families. And that's the one area that I've always been passionate about, are our families and what happens in our communities, and that still continues today.
Got to take a break. We'll be right back with James Lankford. You were just in Muskogee. I
was in Muskogee. Actually, last night did a special event that Muskogee County Republicans put on to honor Dr. Coburn. To him, in that area, he is their doctor, and I spent a lot of time honoring him as a physician in the area and also as the U.S. Senator. Right from there, it was a very touching tribute to Dr. Coburn.
Which proves, once again, all politics goes through Muskogee, Oklahoma.
We have a little bit more time than I thought we had, so that's good. But
all right, that means I get to say this, that we honored Leslie and Cliff Hudson Thursday night for the John and Joy Belt Reed Award for the work that they've done at the Harding Fine Arts Academy, because my friends, Cliff and Leslie, are artsy people.
He's a keyboard player and a singer. I think he's got the sonic tone.
And they did a musical tribute to him, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that's great.
I got to tell you. And I had the one-liner there for John Yokel. John Yokel joined the senior golf tour. On the senior golf tour, you play 3 holes. I said, whoever remembers your score wins. After you play 3 holes. So John Yokel, I'm talking about you, buddy.
Senator, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.
And we'll check back in with you as often as we can.
We'll actually try to get some work done.
That sounds good. See you next week.